Now that all the rust had been cut out of the body and the panels of the 55, the time had come for the engine transplant. If you remember back to the first video where we picked it up from the farm, this 55 had no engine, gearbox, or even mounts in the chassis, giving us the perfect excuse to put something different in. An opportunity came up to buy a cheap 80 Series LandCruiser from a family friend. This 80 essentially became a donor car for the two projects. While it would have been nice to get a turbo diesel motor, it didn't fit the budget at the time, and the straight 6 petrol 1FZ engine in the 80 seemed like a nice modern equivalent to the 2F that the 55 originally came with. We got the 80 back home and began stripping the engine bay and selling any parts we didn't need on Facebook Marketplace. Pretty soon we were able to get the engine out of the 80 and sitting roughly in place in the 55. We managed to purchase some 80 series engine mounts from another wrecker because we didn't want to damage our chassis by cutting them out. These guys actually provided the section of the chassis rail still attached to the mount. We were able to use this to effectively space the engine correctly for the 55 chassis rails. Next, we trimmed the floor pan to make room for the bigger gearbox from the 80 series and jacked it up into position. We then fabricated up some brackets to support the gearbox crossmember and welded everything in place. The original crossmember brackets were no use to us, so we cut them out with the painstakingly slow reciprocating saw. Trying to use as many 80 series bits as we could, we trial fit the 80 series radiator, which was pretty clearly not going to fit, an issue we'll have to solve later. Another part that was missing from the 55 was the front bench seat. Whilst it would have been nice to retain the original bench seat vibe, the 80 series bucket seats fit too nicely and seemed to look right at home. So we fabbed up some seat rails across the floor with nice welded nuts inside the box section, which also doubled as extra reinforcement in the floor. To fill the newly enlarged gearbox tunnel, my original plan was to buy a whole tunnel from a car from the scrapyard and then modify it to fit. This turned out to be a terrible idea and didn't work at all, so we got to work on making some cardboard templates and then cutting it all out of sheet metal. We made sure to have one removable panel to give access to the top bell housing bolts to make any future gearbox servicing a little easier. All in all, pretty happy with how the seats and gearbox tunnel turned out, and you can see the improvements in my welding skills since the rust repair videos. We then couldn't help ourselves and try and start up the mighty 1FZ in its new home. We took the whole loom, ECUs, and ran a long line to the fuel tank and fired her up, a huge milestone for the project. As for the rest of the 80, we sold a ton of smaller parts, panels and doors individually, and the body actually went to a guy who turns them into camper trailers. The chassis and diffs were the bones for Oscar's 4080 project, where he put a 40 series cab on the coil sprung chassis. There's a full build series on our channel if you're interested in this too. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay tuned for the next video where we get the 55 going on its first drive in years.